minutes of the workshop.
Okay.
And if it's, and knowing how interesting, your presentations are, I may stay for longer.
Okay.
But
I managed to get in the yeah,
I may need to leave. Yeah.
and I managed to get Zoom. So
You got the link though?
yeah, nope. I'm already in. I've already opened up the this. Like, ooh, my computer is so close. Well, that hurt. Welcome in, Sarah.
Oh, thank you.
That's smart. God, I hate being on Zoom. It's like I'm having flashbacks to 2021.
Right, right.
I was like, I'd like to teach 2 sessions. It doesn't matter what time, doesn't matter what what modality. And they're like, Zoom, awesome.
You're like, yay.
People I think would rather log into a Zoom though than to come in person, because I had 4 people show up yesterday for my in person.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Most of the ones I've done today have been hybrids, and there's been more people on Zoom than in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it ended up working out okay for me because I had things to do this morning.
Yeah. And a lot of people I think are sick, are getting over being sick. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of, I don't want to get that.
Well, I'm still pretending like I'm in the Caribbean. I was in the Caribbean for 19 days. I got home 2 days ago.
Nice.
And so I'm
Very
like, look,
nice.
my background is indicative of my vacation.
It's got to be hard to leave there and come back.
I'll tell you what, it was like 80 degrees, beautiful, crystal clear waters. The sun was shining. I was in a bathing suit the entirety of the almost 3 weeks. And then I came back here and I was like, what in the hell happened? It's 37 degrees. It's gross and cold.
Yes, it's been bad.
The air is thick.
It is. It's still thick, even though it's cold.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on? Like, why is the air so thick? And it's like, oh, that's right. I'm back in Bakersfield.
That's right. My mom lives over in the Central Coast area. And so in the summertime, when it got to be 115, she had taken off to Texas to go visit some family. And I was like, can we please go stay at your place for 2 weeks? And she let us go ahead and go stay. It was nice.
Well, I always do a Christmas vacation. Like I haven't done gifts for my children in probably a decade. And
Yeah.
so I always take them on a trip instead of buying presents. But
Nice.
every other year, it's usually 7, maybe 9 days tops.
Yeah.
And I cruise, like I'm a cruiser. I like cruising.
Yeah.
So it was going to be the same price for a 7-day cruise out of Los Angeles as a 16-day cruise out of Miami.
Oh, wow.
Exactly the same price.
Wow.
So I was like, you know what? The only difference is I have to pay for airline tickets.
Right, right.
But I get to spend 3 days in Miami, which is also fun.
Yeah.
So we ended up going on, it was 15 nights, 16 days, 12 ports.
Nice. Gosh, that
I don't
sounds
think I'll do it
amazing.
any differently. I had to pull my kids out of school for like 4 days.
That's not bad though.
Because they didn't have as much time off as I do. But I said next Christmas we're doing a cruise out of Sydney, Australia to go to New Zealand.
I want to go to New Zealand so bad. I've been saying that to
Never
my family.
been.
It
Yeah,
seems
never
so
been.
pretty. Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
so
well, that's the plan for next Christmas. So
that's so cool. I'll have to talk to you after and see how it was, because I've been
I am just
saying
I
that.
try ever. It's like people are like, you always are traveling. I'm like, when I'm not in a classroom teaching, I am gone out of here.
I don't blame you. Gosh, that sounds nice. Maybe I need
Weekend
to
trips,
maybe
week-long trips.
stop buying Christmas
Wonder if I'm
presents and
supposed to
start
be
taking
letting
trips.
people into the chat. Now people are.
There's somebody.
Mhm. But I don't think it doesn't show me that there's a oh, there is. Okay, now I have the guest. Now I see where I have to admit people into the room.
There we go.
It's like a refresher course on Zoom.
There
So
we
I'm
go.
telling you, the flashbacks from the pandemic are real.
Yes.
I told my department chair, I know, no more Zoom. Absolutely not.
Over it.
Yeah, but it's okay. I figured it out, Kalina.
Hey,
Hi, Kalina.
hi everyone. Hi Sarah. Hi TJ.
Hello.
I honestly am admiring Heather's classes every day. Feel like
Well,
underachiever with only 2 pairs.
I have 240 pair, and I looked it up, and I think I'm like 130 shy of having the Guinness Book World Record. So I have a appointment at the eye doctor on the 12th, and I intend on purchasing 30 pairs with my new prescription. And so I figure by this time next year, I might be able to beat the Guinness World Record.
Wow, you have to make a presentation for next Flex Week on that. I think that you have an overwhelming interest on that as well.
Yeah, I'm like, don't mind me, just have the Guinness Book of World Records record for the most pairs of prescription eyeglasses.
Hey, as long as we can afford it, that's cool.
Well, so I'm a brand ambassador for the brand Zilul, and so I figured out like the magic number is about 23 pairs. If you order 23 pairs from Zilul and your prescription isn't too crazy, it costs about $350 for 200 pair or 20 pair, 20 to 22 pairs is $300.
That is neat.
Yeah, they're not the best quality because they're like, $10 a pair. But if you're only wearing them, I only wear them once every, 30 days, every 20 days because I have so many. Not that anyone cares about my glasses collection.
I do.
I collect glasses just about the same way I collect tattoos. Pretty soon I'm going to run out of space for those two. So Colleen, are you gonna stay in here long enough to admit all the people who show up late?
Yes, I'm gonna be here at least for 20 minutes.
Okay.
And I think that after that, to me, it's rude to get them admitted for a 60, minutes presentation. So, it's up to you if you want to admit them after that. But
Yeah, I can do it
think
after. I have the thing pulled up right now so I can admit people, but once I start talking, I'll lose like the concentration on that. So
yeah, I'm admitting them,
for
so
now.
don't worry about that as well. I will take charge in that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
And I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm going to put mute because I have one of the student workers and we are trying to take attendance from the prior of the day workshops as
That's
well.
okay.
So we're trying to multitask.
You're good. I'm going to start right on time, and if people join late, that's fine too. I see some familiar names and faces for my department in here, which is nice. Thanks for the support. Is that a fist bump, Aaron? Is that an option? A fist bump emoji? I don't know. It is. Oh, it's just the thumbs up. Hey, Devin, how's it going?
Another day in paradise.
I'm pretending I'm still in the Caribbean right now because I only returned 2 days ago. So I put my background so that I can just pretend like I'm still in the beautiful weather in the Caribbean.
Well, I'm going on a cruise in 2 weeks.
Well, the one I just went on was 16 days, 16-day
Nice.
Caribbean cruise.
Nice.
Pretty nice. All right. So listen, it is 2:30. And so I want to go ahead and get started. For those of you who I have not met before, which is there's a lot of people in here who I have not met, if you can throw into the chat your department, that you are in, and maybe like the main course you teach. If you teach more than one prep, you can throw in, like maybe the 2 main courses that you teach. So I can get an idea of the different, the different departments that we have in here, because that'll sort of guide me in the way that, that I will talk about some of the stuff in here. Counseling, communication, library, criminology, Spanish. Okay, so there's a lot of people from a lot of different departments, which is nice. So welcome everyone to my my Flex workshop today on helping students student. And it was funny because I taught this in person yesterday, and someone said, I thought that that was a like misspelling. I thought that you had like messed up the spelling. And I said, no, actually, I had been teaching at BC since 2017. I am full-time tenured at this point. And one of the things about me that most people have said is that I'm unconventional at best. My teaching, the way I teach, the way I approach teaching, the way I approach my students is very, very different than a way a lot of the other professors at BC approach their relationships with students. And so I've been asked on a number of occasions to kind of talk about some of the things that I do in my classroom that really benefits students in their ability to become better students. So one of the things that we're going to be going over a variety of different tools that you'll be able to use in your courses that you teach, regardless of what discipline you are teaching. Some of the things if you're not teaching core classes, gen ed classes, some of the information might not be as helpful, but there are a few things I'm going to share today with you that I think have been incredibly helpful for my students in my communication courses. I teach predominantly COM-B 1, which is public speaking, and I also teach interpersonal communication and argumentation and rhetoric. All 3 of those classes are gen ed classes, and 2 of those courses fall into the Golden 4. So oral comm is one of the Golden 4, and so is a critical thinking class. So I end up meeting a lot of students in their very first semester at BC. And one of the things that I've realized in my teaching, basically first-time students, is that they have a lot to say. And so, and they have a lot of complaints. They have a lot of nice things to say. And so I tend to do a lot of listening to students, and I take the things that they tell me and I incorporate them into my courses. And it's made it so that my students in my classes tend to persist, meaning that they tend to not only finish my course with a passing grade of C or better, but they generally also sign up for courses the following semester, and many of them, the majority of them, end up persisting through graduation. And persistence isn't just graduating through BC and finishing their associate's degree. One of the things that I do from day 1 in my course is encourage them not only to pursue an associate's degree, but to persist onto a 4-year college to get a 4-year degree. And I also nudge them very gently to also think about getting a master's degree. I tell them all the time, 15 extra months, what is that of your life? No big deal, go on, because once you have an education, they can't take it away from you. So today we're going to talk about some of the things that I do in my classroom and some of the things that I found really helpful to help students to help them become more confident students, to help them persist, not just in our own classrooms, but as BC students, and then further on in their academic career and in their life journey. You may agree with the things that I'm doing. You may be like, this woman is batshit, like she's nuts. I don't know. You can take what you like, leave what you don't. But I think that at the very least, most of you will probably find at least 1 or 2 little nuggets that you can put in your fanny pack of knowledge to take into your classrooms to make it, a better place for everybody, for the professors and for the students. All right, it's been a hot minute since I've presented anything on Zoom. So I am going to give this my best effort to click through this PowerPoint presentation. So the first thing that, can everyone see everyone can see the PowerPoint? Okay, perfect. So the first thing that I wanted to kind of chat with you all about, oops, that's not it. Hold on. I clicked too fast. All right, there. I'm telling you, I was like, no more Zoom for me. And then here we are. Does everyone see new students at the top? Okay, thank you, Fabiola. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is the overwhelming majority of the students that I come in contact with at BC in my classes are first-time college students. In general, most of them have not gone to college before. For our traditional students, they've come straight out of high school. For our non-traditional students, some of them have been parenting children or in the workforce and are now coming back to school. Some students have been in school before, started BC years ago and have decided to come back. But for the most part, I found we have a lot of first-time college students. Many of these students, based on research that BC has done, are first-generation college students. So what this means for our students is they don't have parents to tell them how to student. Their entire experience is based on what they've learned in high school. And as a mom of four, I have four kids, and all four of them have either started or completed high school. All of them have sort of said the same thing. Teachers micromanage everything in high school. They get on you, that do your homework, do your homework, do your homework. Whereas in college, you have your kind of time management is up to you. Doing your assignments is kind of on you. You don't have someone that's constantly like nagging you to get things done. Also in high school, they see you every day, whereas in college, sometimes they only might see you once a week or twice a week at best. So there's a big difference between high school and college, and most students are scared or uncertain, and they don't really know what they're doing. They had a counselor that threw them into some classes their first semester, and they're just kind of trying to figure it out, skating by, by the skin of their teeth, just, doing their best. And so being a professor in my classroom, I've tried as best as I can to offer the students that I teach an opportunity to ask questions, not just about the curriculum or not just about what we're learning in class. And I try to help them learn how to be better students. I found that a lot of students at BC are procrastinators. Is there anyone in this group that's a procrastinator? I am also a procrastinator. One of the things that I teach in my course doesn't have anything to do with the curriculum is when I talk to students about learning how to be a better student, we discuss procrastination. And for those of you who have not read the book, Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, I highly recommend it. The read is about 2 hours long. They have a free download of Eat That Frog that you can download the audiobook, and it doesn't cost anything. And on your next trip to Fresno or Los Angeles, maybe throw it on and listen to it on the way. It's a real easy book. But Eat That Frog is basically the concept of the book is that when we have undesirable tasks, we generally put them off. Right? So we're in the new year. Some of you have put together New Year's resolutions. Maybe some of you need to go to the gym or want to go to the gym. And you'll wake up in the morning and you'll say, okay, today's the day. I'm going to go to the gym. And then life gets in the way. You have to get kids to school, or you have things to handle at work. And then you have work to do, and you go to work and you do your job. And then you have things to handle. And so sometimes the gym sort of gets put off and put off and put off. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to go after dinner. And then you have dinner, and then you're tired because you ate dinner, and now you've turned on Netflix, and well, the gym just didn't happen, right? This is what happens with students as well. When they have an undesirable task, so an assignment that they don't really want to do, they put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off. And then sometimes they end up not completing it at all. And the pressure from having that on your shoulders is immense. I like to tell my colleagues, it's oftentimes difficult for us to remember what it felt like for the first time to manage school, work, relationships, life, and social relationships. It can be very daunting, and trying to prioritize school when you have all of these things coming at you can be very difficult. So I like to talk about Eat That Frog in my classrooms, because the book basically in a nutshell states that if you have the least desirable task, so say you were told today you have to eat a raw frog, like it's died and now you have to eat it. Most of us would be like, I think I'm going to put that off to the end of the day. I don't think I want to start with that. And by the end of the day, you're likely never to eat the frog and put it off till tomorrow. And then tomorrow you probably won't do it either. And then now the frog's rotten, and chances are very good you'll just never get around to eating it. So the book basically states you should do the least desirable task first. So you should start the day by eating the frog. And so in my classrooms, I try and help students learn how to student by encouraging them to always eat the frog. Do the least desirable task first. I also help, I think in my class, I'm incredibly helpful. I try to have them maximize their time at BC. Many of you who are not counselors probably don't know this, or maybe you do. But every student who completes your degree pattern, so let's say you teach criminology, or you teach English, or you teach communication, every student that completes an ADT at BC has also completed all of the required coursework for a liberal arts associate's degree. Because as long as they do all of their gen ed, they qualify for a liberal arts degree. It's not a degree for transfer, but it is an additional associate's degree. For some disciplines like sociology and psychology, they mirror each other so closely that if a psychology student wants to get a sociology degree, they may only have to take 1 or 2 extra classes to get both degrees when they graduate. And if they've done the coursework for both of those, they also qualify to graduate with a liberal arts degree. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is take a look at your discipline and see what the required courses are. So for example, I'm in communication. Neely, Fabiola, Devin, you're all in communication. If students complete the communication degree in their gen ed, they can get a communication degree along with whatever degree they originally signed up for at BC. So I tend to give students a lot of guidance. I'm not a counselor, but I can look up classes and say, hey, if you take this class, it fulfills, you know, multiple degree patterns. And if you have the ability to do that, that's awesome. If you're interested in sitting down with me and kind of one-on-one going through how I figure out which courses they need, I will be happy to help you. But at the very least, you should know your own discipline and know what courses are required for them to graduate within that discipline. I oftentimes will offer students help with their schedules. When students go to chat with the counselors, oftentimes the counselors will tell them that just go in Starfish. Starfish will build your schedule for you. But what students don't realize is they get a choice. They get to choose which classes they want to take. They don't have to just take whatever Starfish throws out at them. And so sometimes instead of taking one of the classes in the gen ed pattern, maybe they would have more interest taking another class. And so helping them at least guide them in the direction where they can choose the classes can be helpful. I try to talk to students about their lives at least a little bit. In my class, it's easy because in public speaking, students often have a higher level of self-disclosure than they would say in a math class or a history class. But asking questions of your students and finding out the things they like or dislike about being a college student is very helpful in general in helping us as instructors put together our classes that, you know, so that they are, you know, beneficial for students and students get the best out of it. One of the things that students struggle with a lot is time management and managing all of their courses. And I'm going to say something that may or may not be a little controversial. So this is one of those take it or leave it, like it, love it, hate it, it's okay. I accept late work until the very last day of the semester. I cut off all assignments the last day of class, not finals week, but the last day of class. If a student in my class can't get an assignment turned in on time, they can turn it in late up until the very last day of class. They are in my syllabus, it states, that they will lose 50%, so half credit, if they turn it in late. I will tell you, I never mark their assignments half credit. If they turn them in to me by the last day of the semester, I give them full credit. The majority of students turn their assignments into me on time because they're fearful about losing the half credit. But one of the ways that I kind of look at my classroom and my job as an instructor is if there are going to be instructors at BC who have a 0 late work policy, they don't want to take anything late, they refuse to take anything late, they have no leniency whatsoever for late work. And that's okay. That's your right, that you can do whatever you want in your classroom. You have the freedom to do that. But if a student has to choose, they have 5 or 6 classes they're taking, and they have to choose which assignment they have to turn in, I want them to do the assignment for the strict professor that's not going to give them any leniency whatsoever, and be able to breathe and take a deep breath and understand if I turn in my assignment for Heather Silvas's class tomorrow, it's still going to be okay. And what ends up happening is my students end up working harder, the work they turn in is better, and they feel safe in my classroom to be honest with me about, hey, I worked really hard. I was up last night working really hard on a couple other assignments. I didn't get the outline done for this, but I'll have it done. The only caveat I would say to that is presentations. So for my class, the big assignments, like for papers or speeches, I do mark those half credit if people are not prepared on the day of. But like little, discussion boards, quizzes, stuff like that, it's like if you can't get to it, I would rather you turn in something great to me 2 days late than to turn some garbage into me on time. That's my own personal philosophy, though. It's helped me persist, though. The overwhelming majority of my students pass my class with a C or better, and they tend to sign up for classes the following semester, which in the end, I believe that, that's great. It's awesome that they're persisting. Another thing that I think that is really difficult for students sometimes is, when they have struggles in their classes, finding the appropriate place for them to get assistance. The overwhelming majority of you probably know about the Writing Center and the Tutoring Center, but can anyone tell me, you don't have to raise your hand, just unmute yourself. Can anyone tell me why the Writing Center and Tutoring Center are not necessarily fantastic for students? Is there any reason why students would not be able to use the Writing Center or the Tutoring Center?
They're not 24 hours.
Exactly,
instance.
Samuel. They're not 24 hours. Also, transportation can be an issue. So it makes it very, very difficult sometimes for students to access the Writing Center and the Tutoring Center. A lot of times professors are guiding their students to the Writing Center without knowing exactly what it is exactly that the Writing Center does. So if a student is struggling with coming up with a paper, they haven't figured out what they want to write about, the Writing Center is going to be virtually no help for them. In order for them to get help in the Writing Center, they have to go with a paper. And generally speaking, the people in the Writing Center will sit down with the instructions for the assignment and the assignment, and they'll go through it and say, I think you met the requirements for this assignment. I think you probably should do some grammatical changes, or you might want to make these other changes, but it's not a place for them to go and brainstorm. It's not a place for them to go and figure out what they're writing about. It's kind of a place to go for their, final touches, so to speak. The Tutoring Center also won't help students brainstorm ideas for papers. The Tutoring Center are students who have taken our classes before, who have gotten an A or a B, who can provide guidance on, ways to attack assignments, ways to, do the homework. But in general, it's not the best place for students who are feeling completely lost. Is there anyone in here who is in mathematics, who teaches math?
I do.
And is it Andrea or Andrea?
It's Andrea.
Okay, Andrea. So Andrea teaches math. And listen, I was told 6 years ago in some training workshop at BC, we're not supposed to talk shit about math. So I'm not going to say anything negative about math. But I will say, as someone who's also mathematically challenged, I found it very difficult in college to get through math. And sometimes if I was sitting down and doing my homework at 11 o'clock at night, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. I found it very challenging because if my friends in the class weren't up, I couldn't ask for help, and there was no place open on campus that could help me. So one of the things that we have available at BC that is incredibly helpful for core classes, English, sciences, and math, for 24-hour help is NetTutor. A lot of instructors don't have the tab for NetTutor on their Canvas. It's easy if you just go into the settings and you move NetTutor into the visible tabs, you will have access to that. If more people don't start using NetTutor, we are at risk of losing NetTutor. That's the way things work at BC, right? If not enough people use them, then the college doesn't continue to pay for them. So I'm going to show you NetTutor. I'm going to show you NetTutor very quickly. So on my courses, NetTutor is over here in the tab. So you would just click on the tab for NetTutor. If you don't have it in the tabs for your courses, you can add them by going into the settings. And if anyone needs me to show you how to do that later, I can do that. But when you go to NetTutor, there are two options for tutoring through NetTutor. The first is the Tutoring Center, which I'll show you in a moment. And second is the Writing Center. Now, the cool thing about the Writing Center is the Writing Center is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So students can either drop in with a live Writing Center tutor, so they can video chat with the tutor, or they can drop off a paper. And when you go to NetTutor and you click on the Writing Center, you can drop in and meet with a live tutor, or you can drop off a paper, or you can drop off a question. If you drop off the paper, it takes somewhere between 2 hours and 36 hours to get your paper back. Most of my students told me when they dropped something off, they had responses within 6 to 8 hours. We'll give it a title and we'll just put some information in here so I can get you to the next screen. The students can choose any two of these things to have them look at in their paper. Topic development, focus, organization, grammar, word choice, sentence structure, sentence variety, transitions, paper format, and citations. If a student drops off their paper, they can choose two of these things. A student can drop off the same paper 5 times with each of those boxes checked off, and they will get feedback about all of those things if they drop it off 5 times. Or they can log in and talk to a tutor in person. For my courses, if a student submits their paper through NetTutor and they incorporate the feedback from their paper into their final draft that they turn into me, they get 5 points added to their final paper, even if it's not great. This encourages the students to use NetTutor, and the majority of them use it for grammar, mechanics, spelling, those types of things. And then all of those things are generally fixed by the time they turn it into me. So for me, I like them to use it because it makes my grading easier, because I'm not spending hours highlighting misspelled words and saying, please check spelling and grammar on your papers. You know, and for students, it's great because it gives them feedback before they've turned in their final draft for grading. They can also drop in and meet with a live tutor by clicking this box, and usually the wait time is less than 5 minutes, which I think is kind of cool. Does anyone have any questions about the Writing Center on NetTutor? Nope. All right. The other option is the Tutoring Center. And depending on what your discipline is, it will depend on what the hours of operation are for the tutors. So for example, in communication, the tutors are only available like 4 hours a day, and it's a really weird window of time. But Andrea, you teach math. Whether if you go down to math, they have options for algebra, calculus, math, and Spanish for your non-English, your students who speak English as their second language. It's math, but it teaches you in Spanish, and then also statistics and probability. all of the maths are available 24 hours a day. So when you click on it and you go up to the top for the drop-in tutoring hours, you'll see it's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I encourage you, before you give your students guidance to go to NetTutor, I would check your discipline. So to make sure that, you know, it's how you know, what the hours of availability for the NetTutor are. Let's see. Back to my PowerPoint. Golly, I haven't been on Zoom in so long. I'm like, share my screen. Where am I? Okay. So the nice thing is you have 24-hour assistance on NetTutor, and you can point your students in that direction. As a communication instructor, I know that the communication people are only available a few hours a day. So I encourage the students for their written assignments to drop them off in the writing center or to meet with someone in person in the writing center, because those people will be able to assist with essays, papers, research papers, outlines, pretty much anything that requires writing. All right, moving along. So this is another thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Canvas, and a lot of the complaints that I've heard from my students in my classes about Canvas start with my professors don't grade fast enough. So I learned in a flex workshop about perfection in teaching at one point that if you are a slow grader, if it's not something you do right away, or if you're like a really slow grader because you choose not to eat the frog and start with the grading, you choose to put it off to the end, put in your syllabus somewhere the expectations for the students to receive their grades back. Give yourself a timeline. If you know you're not going to grade every week, then put in there your grades should be updated within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever your timeline is for those grades. So they have an expectation of when to expect the grade. Because as most of us know, when a student submits something, from the time they submit it, they are anxious. They want to know what their grade is. They want to know if they did well. They want to know if they didn't do well. And one of the biggest complaints that I've had is that professors don't grade fast enough. Do any of you follow the Surviving Bakersfield College page on Facebook? Fabiola, you do? The tea is hot in that page. If you don't follow it, I highly suggest you just add it on Facebook, Surviving Bakersfield College, if nothing else, to kind of see what's going on from the student's perspective behind the scenes. And what will end up happening is students will go on this page and they'll say, hey, I've signed up for this person's class. I went on Rate My Professor and they had a 1 or a 2 out of 5. Can you tell me what to expect? And most of the time people will come back and say, oh, they don't grade anything. I waited the entire semester. I did essay number 1, essay number 2, essay number 3, and I didn't get any grades back until my final grade was posted. And so don't take that class. It's absolutely terrible. But when a professor is on top of things, the response is, oh, they're quick to grade, they're fair, you know exactly where you stand in that class. And students will end up signing up for your classes. Your classes will be more full. I don't know about anyone else, but as someone who teaches at Southwest, I am always nervous about my classes being canceled. So when you grade quickly and the students always know where they stand, it is better for the students. And helping students become better students includes, if you give them grades and then feedback, then they can make adjustments to do better on the next assignment. If they don't have a grade for one assignment and then they do the next assignment exactly the same because there's no feedback or grade, then is that really their fault that they didn't make any adjustments or changes? Or is it partially our fault because we didn't give them the feedback they needed to be able to make those adjustments to get a better grade on their next assignment? So provide feedback. A lot of times, many of us grade in SpeedGrader and we're out there, please do this and make sure you do this and you didn't follow the directions or blah, blah, typing away. Do you know that the majority of students don't know how to access the feedback on SpeedGrader? They don't know what those little blue bubbles mean. And unless you grade with a rubric, where they can access the rubric, which the majority of people here at BC do not. And they can access the rubric and see exactly where they lost points. If you're typing in SpeedGrader, you need to let your students know, maybe the first day of class, when you're going over the syllabus, hey, when you get feedback, you have to make sure you either click View Rubric, or if you don't have a rubric, make sure to click on the little blue bubbles in your assignment, and that will give you the feedback that you're looking for. The other thing is that, when I say consider leniency, I'm talking about offering them an opportunity to turn in their work late. I've had this conversation with multiple people, and some people are like, absolutely not. I don't want to be stuck grading 100 assignments the last day of the semester. Well, I'm here to tell you, if students are waiting to the very last day to turn in 20 assignments, they're going to be garbage anyway, and it won't take you that long to grade them. But by offering leniency to students and giving them time, because their life is a mess, or they're going through a breakup, or they lost their job and they have to find a new job, or maybe they have to work 3 jobs to help pay their rent for their mom because she's disabled. Whatever their life chaos is, if you offer leniency, they will work harder for you when they are in your class because they want to impress you. They want to make you happy. When I was very, very strict, the work I got was much worse than when I became more lenient and said, you know what? I have needed grace in my life, so I'm going to offer grace to my students. Before I went into my PhD program, I was a no late work, better turn it in on time, better follow the directions. And then I had a lot of life chaos during my PhD. I went through a divorce. I was teaching 8 classes. I had chaos at work. I had chaos in my personal life, and trying to manage personal life, my job at BC, and college, getting a PhD, I was a hot mess. And my professor, who was my history of communication professor, sat down with me on a Zoom call. And he said, Heather, you know what? I'm going to give you grace. Just make sure everything is turned in by the last day of class. I will grade it. You're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. I don't want this school part to worry you any more than the other parts of your life. And I want you to be able to handle all of those things without worrying about what you have going on in my class. And it offered me such an immense relief of stress that I ended up completing all the work. I ended up with my only B, but I'm the proudest grade in my PhD program was that B because I had to work for it. I earned my only B in my PhD program. And I thought to myself, that's the kind of professor I want to be. I want to be the kind of professor that cares about the students as human beings, not just butts in a seat. And so I became more lenient. And it's worked out for me, and it's worked out for the students. Make sure that you are answering questions that your students have, not just about the coursework, but about, being a student and how they can, navigate being a student. Oftentimes, the feedback I've gotten from students is oftentimes students feel like if they ask a professor questions, that the professor expects them to have all the answers or to already know how to student, already know how to write a paper in APA, already know how to do a works cited page. The expectation is you went through high school, you're in college now, you should know how to do these things. But I've sort of approached my teaching feeling like I'm going to start at ground zero. I'm going to talk to students and design my Canvas shells in such a way that if they never came to class, that they'd still be able to understand what the expectation is of them in this assignment. I have a very strict attendance policy, so most of them come to class. But as we all know, sometimes they're distracted. Sometimes they're daydreaming. Sometimes they're thinking about the date they're going on this weekend, and they have no interest in listening to me explain assignments. So I'm going to show you what my Canvas shell looks like for one of the assignments in my public speaking class, so that you can kind of gauge what I mean when I say you should have very thorough instructions for the students in your Canvas shell. So this is an assignment for an informative speech. The first thing that I do with all of my Canvas is I have assignment home and realize you have all the tools you need to be successful in this assignment. First, make sure you follow the directions. Underneath my video, there's a link that gives an example of an outline done for this exact assignment past. And finally, if you submit your outline to NetTutor and you use some of these suggestions that they give you, then you get 5 points of extra credit. What's better than that? Good luck on this assignment. And do great. So I found that giving the students emoji video has been incredibly helpful. They usually don't feel so stressed out. They start reading the assignments. And I have some Easter eggs hidden in some of my videos that if there's certain things that them because they can get extra credit points. Like I tell a joke about an owl in one of them. So, and I'm like, if you can figure out which video has the joke about the owl, then you get extra credit. That encourages them to watch them. In my assignment direction, I have a link, instructions on how to write a full sentence. I tell them exactly what the formatting is with additional guidelines. I tell them exactly how I want their header. I explain to them what oral and written citations look like. One of the things in my class is I teach the students how to use Microsoft Word to work smarter, not harder. Microsoft Word through the reference tab will create your citations and your works cited page in APA, MLS, Chicago, and all the other formats automatically. And I teach the students how to use them. It is about 97% accurate. All right, the accuracy is very close to perfect. It's perfect, but it is very close to perfect. I had a friend who teaches in the history department told me, "You're teaching them how to cheat." And I said, to be fair, if there is a tab in Microsoft Word as a tool with a works cited page, that's not teaching them to work, because the truth is, I would bet my house on the fact that students are not opening up the APA manual and typing their sentence based on their reading in that manual. I bet my house that they're going to a website, typing in information, copying and pasting from Purdue or the APA website, copying those citations, and then pasting them back to their Word document. So I teach them how to use Microsoft Word to create their Word page for them. I also have a video to do that embedded in the assignments, that if they don't know how to work cited page, if they need help, they can watch the video. I tell exactly how long the assignment needs to be, what the expectations are. I have an example of an outline that a student did that received 25 out of 25 grade. So they can look at that assignment and say, okay, this is what I need to mirror my assignment. A lot of the things that people have told me that they liked about my Canvas shell, the students, example, every single assignment. I don't know if it's my internet is highly unstable. So it shows you that it has all of the information, and then it tells you 3 areas of influence, and then it is organized exactly the way I want it. So at the very least, students have something to look at them. Okay, this makes sense. This assignment should be organized. And then I have the instructional objectives, and then point system. I have found that when I utilize a very thorough Canvas shell, that it is helpful for the students, and students turn better work into me because they know exactly what the expectation is for them to get a good grade, because it's been laid out in class and also in Canvas. Next, I want to talk about Starfish. And all of us should be getting those Starfish notices, right? It's time to fill out your progress reports. And many of you just don't. It's okay. It's not a requirement of your job. We like them to be done, but you don't have to. I don't just fill out the progress reports on Starfish. I actually utilize Starfish every week. So I, for one, am someone who grades every week. So all of the assignments are due Monday through Thursday. I do a lot of grading Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. On Fridays, all of my grades are completed for all of my courses. And then I go into Starfish and I send kudos to anyone with a C or better. Hey, you're doing a great job. Keep up the good work. Keep turning in your work on time. Good for you. You have a passing grade, an A, B, or a C. If a warning, like, hey, an academic concern. Hey, I want to turn in some of your late work. Pay closer attention to the drafts, or maybe read the chapter before you take whatever it is. You need to work a little bit harder, or else you're in danger of failing. If they've missed too many courses in a face-to-face class, I'll send them an attendance notice. But the other things that are also great about Starfish, you could use Starfish out to students about their life, right? So let's say you have a student who usually is up to class, always does a good job, and then all of a sudden they have some absences. You notice when they're in class, they're not paying attention. They maybe look a little dirty. They haven't taken a shower. I talk to my students. I ask them questions like, is everything going okay? How are things going in your life? Anything I can help you with? And if you are consistent and you talk to students, before class, even throw in some, time pass to get to know them a little bit better, they will come to you and tell you when they're homeless or have insecurity, or whether they're in an abusive relationship, or they've had a loss in the family. And sending out notices to people who might be able to assist them, right? So you can send a notice saying they have housing insecurity, or they might be struggling with some mental health issues. And you can say, maybe reach out to this person. And when you send the Starfish notice, it goes to everybody of importance. It reaches out to all the people who could potentially help. And it creates a paper trail for assisting students. And that's helpful for them. One of the things that I do at the very first beginning of the semester, especially since I have first semester students normally, is I will, while I'm doing roll call, ask their major, and then I will double check their major. When you go into the roll on web, there's a place where you can the Excel spreadsheet of roll with their major, and go through and double check their majors. If they're not, I'll send a Starfish to the counselor and go, hey, roll call, I was asking students what their was. I realized that they're supposed to be this major, but they've signed up for art because they just clicked and they signed up for school. If their major is incorrect and web, Starfish will schedule for them based on what their major is. And if the major is wrong, students will take classes they don't need. They're not going to go out of their change their major or even understand that all of these tools are working together. So if more than just one person is checking their majors, sending off messages to counseling, it will help the students make sure that they're enrolled in the classes that they need. In some cases, they might be enrolled in your class and they don't even need it. And in that case, I've had that happen to me before. I had a student who was enrolled in my CompB 15 class, which is a critical thinking class that's transferable to CSUs and UCs. He had already completed CompB 5, which is also a thinking class, but does transfer to CSUs. Or to UCs, sorry, transfer to UCs. So I asked him, are you planning on going to UC? And he said, no, I'm going to State Bakersfield. And I said, you don't need this class. There's no reason for you to be enrolled in this. It meets the same critical thinking requirement of a course you've already taken. And then he was able to drop class, enroll in a different class because it was the first week of school and about his life. So I try to be helpful with students with Starfish, not just by talking about the things they need in my classroom, but also helping them in their academic career and their personal life to get them the resources that they may need that BC has to offer. And BC has a lot of resources for students that go unused because they don't get tapped enough. All right. The other thing is that a lot of you may or may not teach research in your courses. I know that for communication courses, when we're teaching research or research speeches, we tend to have an entire module on research, and we go into a lot of detail on how to research, what constitutes an academic source or a non-academic. But sometimes students miss that lecture. And for a lot of you, you may not teach that in your class. You research paper and you expect the student to go do the research. But what if a student doesn't know? What if a student doesn't know how to research? What if they've never done a research paper or research project? They don't even know where to start. So one of the things that I love about BC, have an amazing library. The library itself is like any other library, but what makes our library special is the librarians. I love the librarians, and they are there to help students. And one of the things that I tell students in class when I'm talking to them about a research assignment is the librarians are our friends. First thing is, on the library page on BC, when you go to the library page, there's a little button that says Ask a Librarian or Ask Us. When you click that, the student will have access to chat real time with a librarian. The librarian can help them find sources, them information on citations, how to go about finding academic sources. In some cases, I've had students say that the librarian can help them go through the search process and narrow down sources and email them sources that the librarians found for their. So instead of coming to you and asking you for help about research, guide them into a place that is designed for students to get help. And the Ask the Librarian feature is amazing. It's so great. Only available during the hours that the library is. So you have to make sure that if they use the Ask the Librarian, they can't use it in the middle of the night. What they can use in the middle of the night, though, is search. And it's not in here heard of one. It's just kind of like you can. Nobody has. So thank you, Fla and Devin, for having your cameras on. Appreciate that. The rest of you, is there anyone that doesn't know what OneSearch is in the library? Maybe like raise a hand or unmute yourself and say, me, I don't know. Okay, so TJ, you're unsure of what OneSearch is. So most of us, when we were going through and getting our master's degree, we knew that when we were doing academic research, we had to use search engines that were designed for academic research, right? EBSCOhost, Gale Academic, and there's 20, 30 others. Those search engines are incredibly complicated to use. You have to use keywords, the way you type. It's not the same way that you would search on, say, Google, right? Students are used to searching on Google, and when they were accessing EBSCOhost, they were finding it difficult to narrow down their academic sources because they can't search the same way that you do on Google. So a lot of professors say, well, you can use Google Scholar. You can go on Google Scholar and it will search mostly academic sources. However, the problem with Google Scholar is 99% of what you find there is not accessible without paying for it. So OneSearch is the search engine that the library added. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they added it to the library, and OneSearch will search all of the academic search engines, EBSCO, Gale, all of them. It will search all the stacks, all of the ebooks, all of the, and some things on the internet, and every video that is available through the library, whether in person or available online, in one search, which is why it's called OneSearch. And you can search on OneSearch the same way you would search on Google. So I encourage my students when they're doing a research project, if they want to search on Google Scholar because they get more results, I tell them highlight the title of the article, throw it in OneSearch, you'll have access to the whole article. If you want to search in OneSearch, you can. But once you find an article, you should practice backtracking. For those of you who don't know what backtracking is, or you don't teach it in your classes, backtracking is when you access an article, an academic article, and you scroll to the bottom of the article and find in the works cited page other articles that you may be able to use for your paper. Oftentimes, if an article has been used as a source, even if it's a very small section of a paper, you can go to that article and find even more additional information that can be helpful for your paper. So I teach my students to backtrack because sometimes you may only have to find one really good article that suits your needs for your research assignment. And through backtracking, you can find 4, 6, 10, 12 additional articles that you can also use. I also teach my students how to use Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not a great source. It's not an academic source. People can edit it. But what you can do is go to Wikipedia and go to the works cited page. If there's an article that actually is a legitimate article that has been cited in the Wikipedia page, usually if you click the link, it'll take you to the article, and then they can use the article, not Wikipedia, as a source for their research project. For my speeches, I don't necessarily always require academic sources. I allow non-academic sources like the New York Times. As long as it's a legitimate source, they can use it. So allowing them to use Wikipedia as a jumping off ground for research has yielded really good results in my class. If you are interested in me showing you how Microsoft Word, how you can create a works cited page in Microsoft Word after this presentation is over, I will happily do that for you. But I want everyone to be able to leave at 3:30. But if you want information on how to do that, stick around and I'll show it after the presentation is officially over, because I want to get through the rest of the things. Announcements and emails are really important for students, and a lot of us don't use these in Canvas the way that we could to make the learning environment better for the students. Keeping in touch with the students makes them feel like they matter. And when students feel like they matter to the professors that they're teaching them, they will work harder, they will try harder, and they will persist. So in my courses, I always make sure to, when I'm creating the Canvas shell for the semester, I create weekly announcements that are like, hey, welcome to week 1. I hope everyone's having a great week. This week, we are going to be going over this topic. And, if you have any questions, these are my student hours. I talk about that's at the end, but I'll just throw that in now. When we call our office hours, students feel like it's the time that we're in our office where we're grading or chatting it up with colleagues. And they always feel like they're putting you out, coming into your office to chat with you. But when you explain to students that your office hours are in fact student hours, those are the hours that students can reach out, call you, Zoom with you, come into your office, ask questions about class or studenting or college in general, they feel more comfortable coming in and asking for what they need. Keeping in touch with them on a weekly basis, making sure that you're sending out announcements also makes them feel like they matter. One of the things that I do in my course is I send out cameos. It was very expensive. I don't necessarily recommend that for everybody. I think over the course of the pandemic and shortly thereafter, I spent roughly $1,500, $2,000 on cameos to send out to my students, but now I can reuse them every year, so it's great. But I have famous people on Cameo send encouraging advice or tidbits about life to my students. I have enough at this point because I've done it for so long that I send out 2 or 3 a week. If I have a speech coming up, I might have Dougie Fresh wrap speech day, just day, no time to freak day, make sure you practice, okay? Like, it's just kind of like about the coursework, but it's engaging with the students, and then it gives the students something to talk about. In general, they'll come into class. I have one that I sent out with Drake Bell singing the song from Drake and Josh, which is like, I never thought life would be so simple. But anyway, and they all came into class and they were like, oh my gosh, did you see that announcement she sent out? Did you know Drake Bell was canceled? And it started getting this entire conversation started. between the students about current events, which ended up leading into another conversation inside of my classroom. And now I don't send out that Drake Bell one anymore because apparently he's been killed. So I send I send out announcements. All student help for time for them in my student hour. So there are a lot of resources that we have available to us at BC that can help students don't know about, and they don't know how to access them. I would highly encourage you, sure if sends it out, or somebody else from there sends it out, but there's a link that sent out at the beginning of fall that has all of the resources available, like the what used to be called the food pantry is now called Student Nexus or Renegade Nexus. If you don't have information about all of these resources for students in your syllabus with links to those pages, I highly encourage you to look at the list that Nikki sends out and include those links in your syllabi or syllabuses. Helena Costa told me it's not syllabi anymore, it's syllabuses, but that still doesn't roll off the tongue, so syllabuses. So you want to include those in your syllabuses. I am a supporter of the LGBTQ PKIA plus community at BC. I'm on the Out at BC website as an ally to the community. And there is a whole section about dead names and how students can change their names in Canvas so that they can be referred to by their preferred name. And I make sure that all of those resources are available to students in my syllabus. And I also go over in very short detail, all of the resources that are available on the first day when I'm going through my syllabus with the students. This will help sort of put a little bit of a bug in their ear. So if they need those resources down the road, at the very least, they know, okay, I can go and check in my public speaking syllabus. It's going to be in there. So hopefully some of the things that I've talked about today, whether it's NetTutor or how to teach students about the library, like do a little tutorial in your class about NetTutor. Show the students how easy it is to find it. Show the students how easy it is to access the librarian. Don't make assumptions that the students already know how to do the things that you need them to do in your class. They may not even know how to get good study habits. They don't know about time management. They don't know about a whole lot of things. And we as instructors have an opportunity to really guide them to, improve their life in general, not just their ability to be a good student, but also, have a happier life and figure out who they are and, navigate life, school, work, family, all the things that they have to do. So hopefully you'll take the things that you liked from this and you'll leave the things that you didn't like behind. If anybody is interested in seeing any of the cameos that I send out, I'll happily stay in the Zoom meeting to show you like a couple of the cameos that I send out to my students. I think they're pretty rad. I can also go over the Microsoft with you. I'm happy to stay in the Zoom and show you in more detail any of the things I've talked about. So all you have to do is ask. But if you don't have any questions, thanks for coming, and I hope you take away at least one little tidbit of something to help your students become better students.
Thanks, Heather.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
that was really helpful.
You're welcome. And you get to mark an hour off your flex hours. So, check, check.
Right? Yeah.
Winning.
Hi, Heather.
All right, Heather, have a good one.
You too, Devin. Kim, did you have a question?
Yes, hi, Heather. I'm new faculty in public health, and this was just such a wonderful presentation. A lot of the content resonated with me. I did have a question for you. You mentioned that you have a strict attendance policy, and I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing it. One of the things I struggled with last semester is trying to be flexible and understanding the students' schedules. They're balancing, like you said, they're balancing work, family. They have so much going on, but how do I get them to come to class and not break them for attendance, not penalize them, but at the same time, I've there were some days where students just didn't want to come. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing what your policy is.
So my policy is pretty much really straightforward and in line with BC's policy, which is if you can miss up to in a traditional 16-week class where they come twice a week, they can miss up to 4 classes over the course of the semester. What 4 classes? I don't care. Whatever 4 classes. After 4 classes on that 5th class, they'll be dropped. Now, what I do have is and if you send me an email, I can send you a link to I can send you a link in Canvas to my absence report. I have an absence report. So if students miss class for something legitimate, doctor's appointment, death in the family, car doesn't start, miss the bus, whatever is, if it's a legitimate excuse, not like I overslept or I didn't feel like coming today, right? Like an excuse of some sort. And they fill out the absence report. When they get to 5 absences, I go in Canvas and I look, did this student fill out any absence reports? If they didn't fill out any absence reports, I don't have a conversation with them. They are dropped, period. On the 5th class. So you've missed 4, those are easy breezy. You don't have to do anything, just miss them, it's fine. 5th class, you're dropped. But if I go in and they missed 4 classes, and the first one they missed because they had a doctor's appointment. If you have a second time they missed because they woke up with a terrible migraine. The 3rd time they missed, it was because they were in a car accident the day before and they didn't have a ride to school. The 4th time they missed, their baby was sick, whatever. But they filled out the absence reports. Then I will then send a message to the student and say, you have missed 5 days of class. My attendance policy states that you are only allowed to miss 4. I will allow you to remain in the class as long as you don't miss any additional classes for the remainder of the semester. You will to attend the remainder of the semester without anything? If so, I will not drop you. If you respond with, I'll do my best, I think I probably can try, I won't pass, I'll leave in, but if they miss another class, then they're dropped. Yes, they have I don't tell them that I do this. I just tell them 4 classes on the 5th one you're dropped. If you miss a class, fill out an absence report. Students who care will fill out absence reports, and those are the ones if they're missing 8 classes in the course of the semester, but they a C or better, I don't care. If it but of the time, if it's the students who don't do the effort of filling out the absence report, they're going to miss 8 classes and fail. And in that case, I'd rather just drop them anyway.
Right. Thank you. It's very helpful. You said this absence report. is
And
fantastic.
to
Can
be
you
fair,
please
like
share?
what Irina says is interesting that like, you know, so Irina, I leave the assignments open the entirety of the semester. And for me, a lot of those assignments are automatically graded. You know, like the quizzes and stuff, I've built them all in Canvas, so it automatically grades them. So I don't care if they turn them in that they're due or later, 10 weeks later, I'm not grading them anyway. They turn them in by the last day of class, it's fine. Don't go through the hassle having to open assignments for students, have to get emails. Can you please reopen this for me? I just have every assignment in my class open until the last day of the class. Generally speaking, I have very few students turn in things at the last minute. Usually the things that I'm grading at the last minute is extra credit to try and boost their grade. You can just drop people, and then if they come back to you and ask to be reinstated, you can do that. I found with admissions and records, sometimes it takes up to 3 weeks to get a student reinstated in your class. And then they've missed an additional 3 weeks. So I never reinstate. If I've dropped you, I'm not putting you back in my class. So I found that the absence reports are a good way of measuring whether they give a shit or not. If they do, they fill them out. If they don't, they don't. And then that 5th class, they're just dropped. But I'll tell you, I started all of my classes with 30 students last semester. I taught 8 classes, and the lowest number of students that completed my class in each course, the lowest was 24. So I had 24 students at the end of the semester that started at the beginning. So I don't drop that many students, and not that many students drop my class, because I'm lenient and I give them lots of time. And I'd say, I think in each class I might have had I only have A's, B's, C's, and F's. I very infrequently give out a D. So it's like either they pass with a C or better, or they fail. That's usually the way it goes. I think last semester I had 3 of my 8 classes. I didn't have a single F. Everyone passed with a C or better. And it's not because I'm an easy grader, because I'm not. I'm a really, really strict grader, because I give them exactly what I want. So if they turn in anything other than what I'm looking for, they don't get a good grade. They have to work for their grade. But because I offer them leniency, they tend to be a little bit more chill. And they turn in good work because they have more time to complete it. They might say, oh, I couldn't do it but I have time this weekend. I'm going to give all 3 days of this weekend to this paper. So instead of like rushing through to throw some bullshit together that they're going to give me, and I'm going to be like, well, that's not great. I give them the time to say, okay, I'm going to allocate 3 days this weekend. I'm going to turn in something really good. And then in general, what they turn in is great.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. I will then, you said this is a form you created, this absence report?
Yeah, it's just something that I created. But if you send me an email, it's just heather.silvis@bakersfieldcollege.edu. Oops, my nose ring came out. I can send it to you because I have it in I have an assignment in Canvas for the absence report. So I can just send you the assignment, and then you can just upload it right into Canvas.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, but I really, wonderful presentation. You're awesome. And thank you so much.
Listen, I'm a very unconventional teacher. I share too much about my personal life. I'm covered head to toe in tattoos. I am loud and mouthy. I curse too much. I just made tenure by the skin of my teeth. Like, the administrators don't necessarily love me. My colleagues really like me. My students love me. And, I think I do a really good job, not just in teaching the curriculum for my own courses, but also in guiding students to help them make the most of their time at BC and be really proud of them when they graduate. And I'm always at graduation. I'm always running up to the stanchions and hugging people over. Like, I believe wholeheartedly that we are really, really fortunate to be a part of these students' journey. And that we need to take that responsibility very seriously. And I'm not here just to go, okay, the parts of the speech are introduction, body, conclusion. This is how you do a citation. Like if that's my only purpose in being an instructor or a mentor to students, then I should go find another job. Because I feel like a lot of these students don't have the support of their families. They don't have anyone giving them any guidance. They don't have people that know what to tell them. My kids are lucky. I have a graduate and postgraduate degrees. My kids are lucky. I know how to navigate college. I know how to register them for classes. I know which classes to help them choose. But most of our students, they don't have that kind of help. And in some cases, they don't even have the support of their families at home because they're working too much. So I tend to be very unconventional in that there's a very fine line between friendship and mentorship. And I'm just slightly above friendship. Like, the power dynamic in my class is just like so. I don't stand up and go, oh, I'm a PhD candidate and I'm smarter than you all. And I get on their level. I talk to them. I use slang. What's that?
Are you a PhD candidate?
Yeah, so I'm defending my my dissertation proposal in probably in April, and then I'll be defending my dissertation in, I'm hoping, September, October. Yeah, so I'll be finishing my PhD. Yeah, I finished my qualifying exams and my and all of my coursework in my PhD.
I'm also a PhD candidate. So when you were saying like everything, your personal life, your PhD, your kids, this, I was like, oh my gosh, I relate so much.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, I think that oftentimes what people like don't realize is that we're all human beings. The professors are human beings. The students are human beings. And I have a very large social media presence. I have almost 90,000 followers on TikTok and Instagram. I have a very
What? I'm
wild
not
personal
really on
life.
media, so
What's that?
I said I have to look you up. I'm not really on social media.
But so that's caused problems for me at BC because my social media, like on TikTok, I'm kind of petty and I call people out for their bad behavior. I post sort of saucy photos on my Instagram because I lost over 150 pounds in the last 2 years. So I'm just like living my best life. I'm single, so I'm just like, hey, this is me. But the problem is that we forget when we have all sorts of shit going on, like we have home stuff, kid stuff, work stuff. Maybe you're also in school stuff. Then you have other people that are pulling at you, and we feel overwhelmed and stressed. Imagine doing this at 18 or 19 years old without, like, most kids have been coddled their entire life. They don't even know what, like they don't even know how to write a check or pay a bill or any of those things, so it's our job. I believe it's our job to help them and guide them and I want to be the professor that they want to give a hug to on graduation. I want to be the one that says, you really helped me so much on this journey to figuring out who I am and what I wanted to do in my life. I want to make an impact. And I think that if you desire to make an impact, you can have impact. But I have a lot of colleagues in my department, just in my department, who are like, nope, I don't want to learn about them. I don't want them to think about me, blah, blah, blah. It's like, fine. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second.
Oh, I have to run,
So-
but I will follow up with you by email. I have to do some at 4. So.
Yes, an email. Hopefully
All right.
everyone in presentation. I felt like I was talking 100 a minute, but.
No, you did wonderful. Thank you.
All right, well, have a wonderful afternoon.